many of you have spent at least 3 days, maybe 5 days setting up a new laptop when you join a new job? Quick show of hands. Yeah, we've all been there. It's a pain that we all know very much. My name is Lily. I am a senior software engineer at SAP. My team works on one of the new AI products. I'm obsessed with automation and developer experience. I'm a gamer and I like mechanical keyboards. And after 10 years writing software, I asked myself, maybe I could try making my own hardware as well. Why not? And that's how I ended up in the rabbit hole of designing my own keyboard PCBs and building that from scratch as well. My dad was a nerd in his own way with electronics. I am a huge nerd myself, but more than that, I am lazy. I don't want to set up a laptop every time over and over again, doing the same things. Every time you switch a job, they tell you, go install these tools, go install Node, and you ask yourself, well, how do people install Nodes in 2025? Let me look that up. How is Java installed? Let's look that up. And it's always different, it keeps changing, and it's hard to catch up. Before we jump into how I came to solve this problem, let's talk about some of the pain points of onboarding and setting up a new machine. What's often the case in most companies is you're gonna either have wiki pages or scripts shared by your colleagues that are usually bash scripts. Nothing against bash scripts, I love them, I do them all the time, but we're gonna explore a few of the pitfalls on those processes. Starting off with wiki pages. They get outdated very fast. 2 months ago, a working student joined my team, and on his second week, he texted me, hey Lily, how do I get access to IntelliJ? I'm following this guide, send me the link, but it's not working out. And I opened the link to check out, and that's how it starts. We are in 2025, and the guide starts by saying, hey, download the version 2019 of IntelliJ. And what's the most annoying here is that someone came to this page on 2023, added stuff on the bottom, but didn't bother to clean up the outdated information at the top. I'm sure you've seen this in some variation in your workplaces. It's very common. Like you get these guides and you open them and it's all outdated until you scroll and scroll and scroll and okay, this is how we do it now. And that's one point. And wiki pages always assume that you haven't touched your computer yet, and that's the first thing that you should do. It assumes that you are on a very clean state and you have duplication of knowledge, because we already saw it gets outdated, and then you have those instructions on your Confluence, on your Slack, on your Notion, on someone's pinned message on some other messenger, and you never really know what is the way we do things today when someone joins your team and they have to get set up. That's why most onboarding times, for the first 1 or maybe 2 weeks, you'll see the new joiner saying, oh, I'm still setting up my laptop, I'm still figuring out how to install whatever we need. And for bash scripts, we have the issue where it's not really idempotent. You run it, and if you run it again, you run into errors, unless whoever wrote this script put effort into adding conditions to check if everything that is expected from the state of the machine is not already there. Just like the wiki page, they assume a clean state of your machine, and you always have some silent assumptions and hard-coded paths. It's not uncommon to receive an onboarding script from someone, and you run it once, you see it fails, and the error message says, I cannot find the path, users date from IT slash something, and you're like, oh yeah, it's hard coded, let me fix that. Oh, okay. So, how can we make sure that we have a reliable way of setting up a new computer for our developer experience? One of the tools that we can use is Ansible, which is a declarative open source tool for automating the deployment of machines. And you described what's the state that you want your machine to be, and let Ansible do the heavy lifting for you. This is a tool that I have been experimenting with recently, and I found it very nice because you can run these scripts over and over again, and there's no problem because Ansible has built-in checks where you describe, for example, I want Git installed, and I want iter installed, and if it's already installed, it's not going to fail, it's just going to skip it. Let's talk about the features that Ansible brings a little bit more. It is agentless. What that means is you don't need a daemon running on your computer. It just executes when you run the Ansible script, which is called playbooks on Ansible language. And yes, it's playbooks. They are in YAML files where you define a set of tasks, a set of hosts where it should run, and this is how it looks like. Here we have the hosts. For our case, we want to set up our own machines, so it's localhost. You can use Ansible to set up several computers in a network or servers. We have a few statements like gather facts, just passes to Ansible what's the platform that you're running, what is the operating system, what's the home path. And you have a list of tasks that you want to be executed on your computer. And you can also import other playbooks that are defined in other YAML files. Ansible is declarative, not imperative, in a way that you describe what's the state that you want. In this case, we want to make sure that your Mac has ffmpeg, fzf, and git. Like I said before, you don't have to code. If it's installed, skip it. Ansible does it on its own because it's already built in. And we can also have rows in Ansible. Think, for example, you could have front-end roles and back-end roles that you execute for different people on your team when they are onboarding. And we also have Ansible Galaxy. This is a little bit like Docker Hub. It's like a hub where the community can submit their own Ansible playbooks or Ansible collections and roles that can be reused by other people. In the example that we're going to explore, I use collection from someone else to install Homebrew on MacBooks. So I don't have to manually code everything around installing Homebrew. It's already there, you just have to import it on your playbook. Some other features are variables that you can set. Here's an example of setting up SSH keys to be used on a later task. We're gonna see this running live soon, hopefully. It has an inventory, which is where you define which machines you want to manage. On our case, it's just going to be our local host because we're setting up our new developer machine. And you also have Ansible Vault to encrypt and decrypt secrets. For example, think if you have to pass in a token to every engineer in your team, this is an example of how you would encrypt the secret and decrypt it. So the process usually goes like you first encrypt it, and you probably don't want to run the decrypt unless you want to see in plain text what are the contents. But when running a playbook that uses those secrets, you pass the argument ask vault pass that prompts you for a password to decrypt the secrets while executing in memory only, so you never would have the decrypted secrets on your storage. And the biggest selling point for Ansible is the idempotency and repeatability. Like I mentioned before, when you do bash scripts, you really have to put some effort to make sure that it is consistent and it doesn't fail when you run it over and over again. And Ansible just gives it to you for free out of the box. And this is really, really cool to see. And let's jump into the demo. So here's the plan. We're gonna take a look at some code to see how I have structured this automation. And then, if the internet allows, we're gonna actually run it live. And I want this demo to be very exciting, so I was a bit bold. And I'm gonna show this running on macOS, on Ubuntu, and on Arch, by the way, at the same time. So let's see if this is gonna happen. First, let's do Mac. Put up a virtual machine here. Oh, no, sorry. I first wanted to show the code. My keyboard's running away. All right, can you read that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so this is the entry point of Ansible. I have a main playbook, and here you can see that depending on which system that this is running, I will include specific tasks for either macOS, Ubuntu, or Arch. And the things that are common to all of them, I just import as a playbook without any condition. But there's one catch. When you're setting up a machine, you don't have Ansible installed. So how do you deal with that? Like I said before, I'm lazy. I don't want to deal with that. So I already made a shell script because every machine should have bash already installed. And here, let me make this bigger. Here is what does the most heavy lifting. When you are on macOS, you will have this piece of code being executed. First thing when you get a new Mac is installing Xcode, and that takes a while. So I have a loop here that waits for the installation to finish, and then it checks if Ansible is installed and installs it if it's not yet installed. Nowadays, macOS ships with some version of Python, so I just use that to install Ansible, and then it won't have a homebrew when it's a new Mac. So here we call this Ansible Galaxy install requirements. With this collection is the one needed for installing homebrew. And at the very end, when I pass to this script a parameter called Lily, it will run with the ask vault pass, and it will run an additional playbook which I use to set up my SSH credentials to access a private repository on Git, because I have this repository where I do some work in progress scripts and work in progress tools, so I prefer to leave it private. And I have my SSH key here to access that private repository. It's encrypted, so it's no problem if I show it to you. Without the parameter Lily, it just runs everything else and sets up the applications as you would want in any computer, or as I would want in any computer I have. We took a look at the macOS bit, and there is also, of course, the Arch specific bits, which uses Pacman to install Ansible, and a collection that's needed for installing Yay, which is Arch's package manager, and also a block for Ubuntu to install Ansible with apt. Alright, let's see if we have that working. Alright, I'm not sure how stable this internet's gonna be, but bear with me. Let me... Okay, this is not gonna work. Okay, I just want to show you real quick that we do not have Brew's not installed. Node is not installed. Do we have Git? I think macOS ships with Git nowadays. But you get the idea. So the first thing I'm gonna do is download this repository that I have. I think macOS already decrypted it for us. So I go into that folder and let me... Now we have here that bootstrap starting point. And the first thing it's gonna do is it will install Ansible in order to run the playbooks. And when it's done, it should ask me for the password. Okay. Let's give it a little bit of time. Yep. Now Ansible asks for the become password. This is the password for become a super user. I will enter it. And for decrypting my encrypted SSH credentials, It needs the vault password, which is my very secure password. And it's gonna take a while to install all the apps. While this is happening, I'm gonna try to connect to my desktop PC at home to show you how this looks like in Ubuntu and Arch. Can I move this? Okay, I need to move this first. Yay, green! I have an Ubuntu virtual machine and an Arch virtual machine. Okay, let's do the same process. I come here, I download the repo. Here, unzipped. Now, let's. Okay, it's a bit slow because of the internet connection. What I want you to pay attention here is that I'm not running different scripts for Ubuntu than it was for the Mac. It's the same script that we used. We're gonna use here again. Here it already prompted me for the sudo password because we are first installing Ansible on Ubuntu with apt, and once that's done, it will run our main Ansible playbook and ask again for the become super user password and for the vault password. Let's go with Arch now. Now, Ubuntu and macOS ships with an unzip installed, so we can just download it and double click to unzip, but Arch doesn't. But it does ship with BSD tar, which like I said, I'm lazy, so I made a one-line command here that uses core to download the repository as a zip file and extracts, difficult word, unzips it with BSD tar. That's done, and we are already on the folder with the files that we need. Some delay here. Okay, in this case for Arch we are using pacman to install Ansible before we run the playbook. Ubuntu has finished installing Ansible. Now I put my password again and default password. And again, you see that on all the systems, I'm running the same script, passing the same arguments. I'm not doing anything different. Let me cancel here. I think I forgot to pass in the Lily argument on Arch. No, I actually did not. I passed it with a typo. That's why it didn't prompt me for a vault password. Okay, now this should be doing some work. Meanwhile, let's take a look at how our macOS is doing. What's happening? Yes. It's still installing. All right. Well, you all have noticed that the internet connection today is not very stable. I'm gonna give it a few more minutes while this is happening. If it doesn't finish, don't worry, I have a recording. But I would be happy to take one or two questions while this is happening. Yes? You said you don't like much script, but still you go for it. So that's it's more like I don't like automating the whole shebang with bash script. Um, I can show you again real quick. Uh, like you can see here how much I have to check if we have Ansible, if Ansible is already not there, if Ansible exists but it's on already on a different location. What I meant is if I was to set up the entire machine with everything with bash script, this would be a very long bash script. The point that I'm trying to make is like, okay, I want to just do this Ansible installation with bash script because that's the entry point, and it's already becoming a little bit too long. But then I want to use Ansible to do everything else. And for example, let's take a look at what we are doing with Ansible. Let me open up this. I can open up my tasks folder and go, for example, for apps for macOS. With Ansible, I'm installing 1Password, iTerm, Telegram, Visual Studio Code, VLC, Microsoft Edge. Yes, I use that browser, sorry, and Slack. And I'm setting up iTerm with all the settings that I normally use. For example, for Ubuntu, some apps are more tricky to install because you have to get the GPG key and then you have to make sure that it works and sign it or and some steps are already starting to look uh, complicated with Ansible. If I were to do this with Bash, I imagine that it would be a lot more harder and a lot more verbose to handle every possible edge case to make sure that I can run this script again over and over again and it's going to be fine and nothing is going to break. For example, here our arch has finished. So what I would do normally is I just make sure that it uses ZSH as my terminal. And then once I open it again, it should have all my new settings. That includes, for example, the CSH RC configurations, the power level 9K with everything. Now, if I do something like, oh, I mean, this wrong. I already have Node set up. Now I have Python set up and other things. For example, and I want to go here again to the downloads. And I also install ESA for file listing, which always returns me as a vertical list with the directories on top, which I like. And I already should have an alias that gives me a long list if I just type L, or tree view with T. And if I try to open one of these files with Vim, it should be alias to NeoVim. First time you start up NeoVim, it downloads the dependencies. That's what I took a little bit. And it's everything already set up. Oopsies. Here we go. Okay, how to exit Vim? That's the tricky part. Wrong. Oh, is it? Nope. think I made a modifications. I'm sick. Yeah! Now, let's see what happens if I just try running the Ansible script again. Oh, I think my keyboard layout went crazy. Let's go with that one. Oh, this the internet connection is not fast. I'll just run it like that. And what we should see is that, for example, you see how fast it's going through these packages because Ansible realizes this is already there. We just installed it, so it just skips that and doesn't waste any time doing that. And I'm gonna go back to here. I'm gonna open up the Arch because that's what we were looking at right now. And you see, I just say, hey, this has to be installed. I don't have to have an if condition that checks for each of them if it's installed or not. It's just you describe this state that you want. These packages have to be installed. If it's already there, then Ansible will just gonna skip them and move on to the next thing. And that is, for me, one of the biggest selling points. See, it already has finished because there's nothing basically to do. Everything's already there. And I wonder how macOS is doing. It's taking some time. When I tested this at home, Ubuntu and Arch took roughly 6 minutes to complete, both of them. But macOS, I made a recording today here with today's internet and it took like 20 minutes. So I think I'm gonna let it run, but you have already seen this working, so that's nice. I'm going to put my slide back up. Ah, where did it go? Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, do we have more questions? Yes.
I assume that everything that you are installing is always installing the latest version, right? I work in a system that we need like it's a legacy system and we need specific versions like Node and everything to run it. Is it possible to specify the version you want to install there?
Yes. On the case of applications like 1Password, Slack, and Teams, it installs the latest versions. But for example, for Node, I'm using ASDS, which is a version manager for developer tools. And on my Ansible script, I set it to download the latest version of Node, but you could also set it for a specific version. For example, in Python, I actually have it set to 3.9 because that's what has been working well for me lately. I think it's easier if we just... Yeah, we first installed Conda for managing Python environments, and then we set up it's this one. Yeah, here's where we go with Python 3.9 is what I have put on this version of this script. You could choose uh, something else, like in the case of Node, you could choose to install any other versions. It doesn't have to be always the latest. There was another question close to you?
No, I had the same question.
Okay. Okay. Another one? Yes. Oh, there's a microphone behind you.
And yeah, that was great. Actually, gave me lots of ideas to implement. Um, you know how difficult or easy it would be to add to the operating systems because we have some Windows uses to start with a blank and then install WSL2 and pull a distribution, a Linux distribution, and go through the Ansible scripts.
I haven't tried that myself, but it's a very interesting use case. I imagine that it will be possible because Ansible already provides Windows executable, so you can automate Windows machines with that. And yeah, I haven't tried that myself, but I am interested in that because I also use Windows with WSL, and also some of my colleagues use Windows machines. I I believe it should be possible, but I haven't dug deep into that specific scenario yet.
I'll try it at least.
Yes, nice. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna. Oh, there's one up there.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just have a realization, maybe just a question or so. Is my opinion that you are basically copying the list of applications for every platform you want to support, basically because you're using Homebrew for macOS, so you have to specify the packages on Homebrew, and then for Ubuntu you have to use apt-get, so you have to specify a different list, right? So basically you're maintaining two different sets of lists. You cannot just have a list of applications. I want VS Code, Slack, and I don't know what else, and then it will run on every platform. Is it
Yeah, that's a very good point, and you can in fact optimize this further exactly for that use case, like the programs and packages that are the same for every platform. One optimization I could do here is to have it on a variable and just use that list on each of the systems to avoid repeating the list of packages that get installed. Um, just a disclaimer, I'm not an Ansible expert. I'm also learning as I go, and that is a very nice realization. Thanks for the question. It's definitely something that I would try doing on my next change to this automation. Okay, one small thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is the SSH keys that I use for cloning a private repository. You might think, is it kind of dangerous or like a security risk of having your SSH key included on a public repository that other people might grab? And yes, this is a thing to think about, but on this case, these SSH keys here, they only have access to one single repository on GitHub and only read access. So even if they were to leak, I wouldn't be too much concerned about that. And how you get to make that happen is that instead of going through the regular SSH key process to add to GitHub, you define a deploy key on your on the repository that you want to be accessible through an SSH key. So on my case, I have some work in progress developer tooling that I'm still working on that I want to access when setting up a new machine. And that is the only thing that this SSH key can access and only read access. So it's just something I wanted to bring up. Is there any other questions? Okay, if no more questions, then thank you for coming to this talk. I hope I have inspired you to create your own automation, either for your own computers or to start automating things in your teams. Thank you.